Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hey, Mohamed, good to see you again.
Good to see you, John.
In our last episode, we talked a lot about leadership, and this whole month, that's our theme, is leadership. And it's kind of interesting because anybody who's a fan of Dr. W. Edwards Deming is familiar with his 14 points in running an organization. And in those 14 points, he uses the word leadership several times. Stop doing this bad thing, instead substitute leadership. And he has that in there a couple of different times. But what do we mean by the word leadership? We use it a lot. We say that we need good leadership. We need good commitment from our leaders. But what does that word mean exactly? What are your thoughts when you hear the word leadership? What comes to mind?
What a tough question, John. That's such a broad umbrella question. And so I'll try to answer it to my best abilities. When someone asks me, like, what is leadership? I would say, kind of building off what we talked about in the leadership commitment episode prior to this, is they have to be living a set of principles. And so do they lead with those guiding principles in their day-to-day operations? I would say that's one item. The other thing too is, do they have empathy towards others? I think leaders need to have empathy, and it's easier said than done. I think empathy is one of those things that unless you're willing to go into the pit with people and understand really the separate realities of what they're going through, you really can't say you understand empathy. I think the other thing too is that you have to set a vision as a leader. People have to understand, where are you taking them? So I think as leaders, you have to set the vision, and you have to be willing to do the little things that need to be done. You can't have an ego. You have to be able to be vulnerable, and you have to be able to understand that the wisdom is not all in you. You can't be a legacy in your own head. I would say that the other thing that I think is really critical too is are you operating over like a management on-site versus or a management oversight? Because I think as a good leader, you have to be a manager on-site, and that doesn't mean micromanaging, but that means that you're willing to go out there and understand what barriers your people are going through and be the person to help remove that. Not firefight for them, but empower them to be able to do the work that they need to do, be able to delegate decision-making to the lowest possible level. But that brings us to the conversation around style, and the style of the individual, I think, what sets a leader from others apart. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the theme of the book that I wrote, The Facade of Excellence, gets into this, right? I've been wrestling with this question my whole career. What is a good leader?
Yeah.
And the problem is that we tend to put everybody in the same bucket.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to treat leadership as very generic. That hey, every leader has to have these particular types of characteristics. But it turns out that an organization might need a different style leadership depending on where that organization is in their growth, in their maturity towards becoming a team-based culture. If that organization is in crisis mode, right? If they are, bleeding red, or they have major quality issues, or not able to meet their customers' needs. And at that point, that organization needs what I call a style one leader, a crisis leader, someone who's willing to step up, make the tough decisions, take the responsibility, put the organization on their shoulders, and get them out of the crisis. Right? So that might mean that that particular leader style needs to be a bit abrupt, a bit, energetic, to the point, because you're fighting the clock, right? You know that, hey, if we don't get this ship righted in the next month, 2 quarter, whatever, then it could sink and we could all go down with it. And then everybody's, done.
Yeah.
So the sense of urgency needs to be there. Now, at the same time, that leader needs to have the same characteristics that you just described.
Yep.
You can be a crisis leader and still have empathy and still be out on the shop floor and talking to people and, over communicate and building trust, right?
Yep.
So we tend to think of crisis leaders as dictators that are cold and heartless and, do whatever it takes to get the job done. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about someone who understands the situation, knows they need to take on the responsibility and make the tough decisions, but do it in a way that starts to build trust and camaraderie with the employees.
100% agree.
Now, a crisis leader also understands that the longer the organization stays in crisis mode, the more brain dead all the employees become, right? Because if they get used to the leader making all the decisions for them, then they don't have to think and they don't have to take any responsibility. And they can go home every day with a clear head and conscience because, hey, all I did was do my job and I didn't have to make any decisions. Well, you could build a robot to do that, right? Yeah. And that's not what we want in our employees. We want people that are coming to work every day thinking, how can we get better? How can we do this process in a different way? How can we get rid of waste? How can we improve quality? How can we do it in a safe manner, address safety issues? So that takes us to style 2, which is the ideal generation leader. So this is important step in the evolution of the organization because you're basically engaging people's brains by asking them for their ideas on how things could be improved, how things could get better. And at first they might be reluctant to share those ideas because if there's no trust.
Right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I thought that was your job to come up with all the ideas. But the first time you start to implement some of those ideas and give the credit to those people who came up with the ideas, then it starts to feed on itself. And people are like, well, now I've got an idea and we could do this, we could do that. So that's style 2, is the idea generation, where you're engaging people's brains, maybe for the first time ever in that organization. Then you move on to style 3, which is the team leader, where you're now ready to start forming teams of employees. And as we've talked about last month in the team discussions, teamwork is not easy. You don't just throw a group of people in a room and wave a wand and say you're a team, start acting like it, right? It takes some skills. It takes some development. It takes some getting used to working in a team. There's, can I trust these other people that I'm sitting around the table with? Do I like their ideas? Are they willing to listen to my ideas? So a good leader in the team style 3, is someone who is providing direction for the teams. They're coaching, they're mentoring, they're giving them the tools to be successful, maybe even providing a neutral facilitator to help them as they get started, those kind of things. And then finally, style 4 leader is what I call the empowerment leader, where the teams are now working so well that the leader can truly be a full-time coach and let the teams actually address the problems that are happening closest to the process, because they know the process the best. They know what the problems are. They know how to handle those things. Now, the leader still provides oversight, still coaches them, gives them, guidance, helps provide additional training to help them take it to, the next level and next level and next level. But that also provides time for the leader to do this kind of things you were just talking about, developing a vision. Where are we going? How do we grow the company? How do we expand? Or if they anticipate a downturn, how do we overcome that downturn in the economy? How do we expand into other services, other product offerings, so we don't have to lay people off? If I'm in crisis mode all the time, I don't have the time to think through those kind of questions. And then when the economy does turn down, the first instinct is well, we got to lay people off. Well, no. If you're in style 4, now the leaders have the ability to
pivot.
Pivot and come up with new ideas of how to expand the business.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about, because you can't just wake up one day and be a style 4. It's a progression, and most times in the transformations, you start with a style 1, which is the more dominant one that you usually find in organizations, and it kind of progresses to a 2, to a 3, to a 4. So I love how you highlighted that. And as you go there, especially between shifting from 3 to 4, I feel like it's like once the team has clarity on what they need to do and the technical competency to do it, that is when you start shifting into the style 4 of empowerment. Because at that point, your focus is really on clarity, on vision, and on my team already has the technical competencies. I now could grow them to that next level.
And it may take years to get to style 4. And you're right. Too often organizations try to jump from 1 to 4, and the organization's not ready for it yet. And then when the teams start to fail, the people who are more comfortable with that style 1 leadership, the crisis leader, will say, see, told you so. I told you this wouldn't work. So no, you're right. You have to allow the organization to grow and mature towards that style 4 leadership style.
The other thing, and this could be its own podcast as well, so I'll just be very brief about it, but in each one of those styles that you just articulated, which, I feel like that's a great roadmap for people to learn how on this transformation can go from a crisis leader to an empowerment leader. There's a language change that happens at each one of these styles. You're often feeling like you're the victim in a style 1, and things are being done to you, where you're very purposeful and visionary when you're in the empowerment style. And the language you use in the empowerment style is very different than the language you use when you're in the crisis style. And so I think language in leadership also shifts, and understanding that if people get used to a certain language and then you shift that language, that they understand why you're shifting that language. Because I could be a style 4 and then we run into a crisis that I move to a style 1 and my language change, and they might think, well, he all of a sudden has an ego now. Well, no. And that's why I think you said over communicating is really important, because if people trust you in a style 4 and understand why we're shifting to a style 1, they see you more on the floor, they see you more rolling up your sleeves and kind of pushing everyone to the finish line, where before you weren't doing that, then you're not going down there to micromanage, but you're intentionally shifting. And I think sometimes I have seen when people pivot their language without the organization understanding why they pivoted, they just become this all of a sudden arrogant individual. And it was an intentional shift, which needs to be communicated before the shift happens.
Exactly.
And because
explain to the organization, because you're exactly right. This isn't linear.
Mhm.
If the organization, you could be at style 2 or 3 or even 4, and then a crisis hits, and the leader will by necessity need to go back to style 1.
Mhm.
But if they do a good job of explaining what the crisis is,
Yeah.
and make the commitment to get out of the crisis as quickly as possible and get back on the journey towards style 4, people will respond positively to that instead of negatively. Whereas,
Yeah.
if you don't explain all that, or if they don't understand what those different styles are, then they could think, oh, you're right. This person's just going back to being a tyrant. We thought they had changed their colors. Well, really, they haven't.
It was a
Um,
facade. And
right.
I think they
Yeah,
were just
exactly.
pretending to do this, and then when they felt like, their power is being stripped away, they moved to that style. And in some cases, that could be true.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I tell you where this happens, and I've seen this happen many times actually. Let's say an organization has migrated all the way to style 3 and 4,
Mhm.
and then the leader moves on,
Mhm.
and they're probably moving on because they're being recognized for the great work. And then all of a sudden, the executives and the human resources folks hire a replacement who is a style 1
Mhm.
leader. I mean, it's extraordinarily damaging to the organization, right? Because
Yeah.
this new leader's coming in saying, "Oh, I'm the one that's in charge. You can't do anything without me." And if the organization's used to being in that empowerment mode, oh my goodness, what is this? This is not good. This is what we used to have, many years ago that we hated, and now we're going back to that.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm going to quit, or I'm going to just shut down, and I'm not going to participate anymore, because this was all. So you can see how important it is for the entire organization to understand what leadership style is needed for that particular organization at that particular time, and hire the right people to fulfill that need. The
Yeah.
same thing could be done. Imagine if an organization's is stuck in style 1, and they've had a crisis leader managing them for years, and then all of a sudden they leave, and you hire a style 4 leader into the organization.
Mhm.
Same thing. Style 4 leader is going to get extraordinarily frustrated. Wait, why are you asking me to make all the decisions? Why aren't you empowered? Why aren't you doing these things? But they don't have the technical skills or the knowledge or any of the training to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there going, tell us what to do.
Yeah.
And then that style 4 leader is going to be like, okay, this is too frustrating for me. And they're going to, you know, leave as quickly as they can.
Well, and in this case, you've deteriorated even the guiding principles.
Right.
They don't exist anymore, and so there's no frame of reference anymore because you're seeing these principles being violated, and no one cares.
No, that's exactly
You
right.
know, one of the things as we come to an end here that one of my senseis used to do, and actually my father used to do this with me as well, is he would say, when you talk to an executive, you want to know what style they are really, really quickly, ask them who cleans their toilet and vacuums their floor. If they don't know, okay, that should give you an indication of the level of humility they have.
That's a
Because,
great.
but if they do know, they could tell you, they could even tell you how many kids they have. They could tell you stuff about the janitor in your organization. They could tell you they are individuals who are also willing to do the little things that are worth doing, do the little things that need to be done. And those, what my father at least would call like, those are people that are willing to clean the toilets.
Yeah.
And that is a fundamental ingredient to the styles that have to take you through that. It's humility,
Right.
servant leadership. And if you have that and are able to pivot between those 4 styles, you'll be successful. If you
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
have a servant leadership style, then you really can't move through that.
So that's to conclude this discussion. That's what I say is that the best leader, and if you have these folks in your organization, hold on to them. Do whatever you can to validate them, to promote them, So someone who has the characteristics that we're talking about, the empathy and the good communications and ability trust, build
Humility.
trust, humility, all that.
Yeah.
And then understands those 4 different leadership styles and understands how they need to change from style to style to style, and the importance of getting everybody to style 4. Because that's the thing, is that you might run across a leader who's really comfortable with style 2 and not comfortable with any of their styles. Or they might be comfortable with all 4 styles, but they don't really have a good way of recognizing which style is needed at a particular time, and they use the wrong style at the wrong time. So
Yes.
the person who understands all 4 styles, has the characteristics that we've been talking about, and knows when to pivot from style to style to style to help the organization grow and mature and get to style 4, they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. And, I just want to reiterate something that you said that is, I think, critically important for people that are listening to this. The goal is to get them to a style 4. Because I find a lot of people who would justify staying in a certain style. And I think your goal is, if you pivot to any of the other styles, is to have a time frame of when you're going to go back to 4. Because if you spend too much time in a certain style that's not 4, it could actually come at a cost. So,
Absolutely. All right.
uh,
Well, we'll continue this next week when we talk about how leaders get involved and how
yeah,
they actually make things happen. So we'll see
looking
everybody
forward to
next
it,
week.
John. Take
All
care.
right.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.